want to develop something for you. Actually, I want to make you aware of something many of you already know about, but you don't really use it that much, at least consciously. And that's something I call your antenna. It has a more official anatomical name. It's called your reticular activating system. There's a little piece of your brain, you know, about the size of a little marble or something, that it's called the reticular formation. And it has a job, and if I may simplify for a moment, its job is to find out in that outside world for you what's important to you. Here, I need the microphone here for, let me give it to you, could I? Okay, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, okay? They're really easy questions. Just give him the microphone, or put the microphone in front of him. While you're speaking to me, you can hear me speak, can you?
Yes, I can.
Okay, okay. Are you aware of your heart beating?
Yes.
Right now?
Yep.
Were you a minute ago before I started? Before I asked you that?
No, I wasn't.
Okay. Are you aware of the weight of your left foot inside your shoe?
No.
Are you now?
Now that you mentioned it, yeah.
Okay, now that I mentioned it. Okay. Are you aware of the weight of the eyeglasses on your ears or on your nose?
Yes.
You are now?
Yes.
Were you a minute ago?
No.
Okay.
Only because you mentioned it.
Are you aware of your breathing?
Yes, because you mentioned it.
Were you a minute ago?
No.
Okay. Interesting. You see, thank you very much. It's a really simple set of questions. You know, I could ask anybody that. And there's lots of things going on that is sensory input to you that you just ignore, okay, because it's not important to you. Presumably, you know, what's important to you is what you're here to focus on, okay? And so this seminar and what was going on here is important. So all the other stuff, well, it's certainly sensory input, just like my voice is, and just like all the sights and sounds and stuff that are part of that are, you ignore them. You have this reticular activating system. It's the antenna, that I call it, that is out, and it filters everything else out except what's important to you. I forgot where I read this, but there's something like 2 billion inputs you get, sensory inputs, a minute. Okay? And so your system only pays attention to a very small fraction of that. Otherwise, you'd go insane trying to, remember, be aware of every single little movement that goes on in your body and all the sights and sounds and everything else that goes around you. Okay? You just tune that all out because you tune in what's important to you. Okay? Well, to many of you, that's kind of routine, okay? Because many of you are, psychology experts and so on. One of the other things it does, though, which is highly useful to you, is it finds out there in the world that which is important to you in this way. The phrase I want to use, the way to do whatever you want to do already exists. You need only tune into it, you see. So if we want some new level in our lives and we're not aware at the moment of how to do that, we may even say, perish the thought, I can't do that, okay? But if we will start doing affirmations and daydreams and other ways to create consistent thoughts, what's going to happen is our antenna is going to find the way to do it for us. Okay? And there are many, 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 many ways to do it. What most people do is they want to do some brand new, in fact, I'm going to give you an example. This is what happened to me, and this is how I used the antenna. Okay? In the early 1980s, I had my divorce. I had my second divorce, and I gave most of it away except for just a little cash to start with. And I wanted to live at the Sea Ranch, California. Now, I lived on the peninsula, a little south of San Francisco, actually, in a highly populated area. And I wanted to go to the Sea Ranch where the population is 500, okay? There's no businesses there, et cetera. And I wanted to run this little business. It's an investment business, and the people invest in it, but wealthy people in pension plans and things like that would put their money in this investment that I would run. And I had just started this thing. I was starting from scratch all over again, okay? I didn't want to sell insurance anymore or sell investments. I really wanted to run this partnership. It's different than selling an investment. But I did have to sell people and putting money into this investment, okay? But I had this thought, I wanted to do it at Sea Ranch, which is a 2.5-hour drive from San Francisco, where all the money is, okay? In the highly populated area, where all the pension plans are and so on. And I kept putting in my mind, with my own daydream, about living at Sea Ranch, because I loved the idea of living there, and with the idea that not only would I run a business out of there, but all the prospects, all the clients would call me. Now that's a little interesting, isn't it? Go way off in the boonies someplace and have people you don't even know call you with interest in investing in this investment thing you run. They don't know you, they don't know anything about your investment, but they're going to call you. Sounds a little impossible, does it? Does it? Some people nod, some people, wait a minute. Give the microphone right here. You said it doesn't sound impossible.
No.
Okay, why does it sound impossible?
Because you have shown us over the last 3 days that anything is possible.
Right. And if I hadn't shown you that, though, my guess you'd go, highly improbable anyway, okay, for somebody to go off in the boonies where nobody knows him and have clients he doesn't know with lots of money call him, you know, with interest in his investment, okay? Highly improbable. Highly improbable. But you see, if I were to sit down and say, well, now how am I going to do this and start using my left brain, I'm going to have to come up with whatever is already on my walls about the ways, the possibilities of doing this. And so I may think of a way or two and I go, well, I don't know how to do that, and maybe I wouldn't even try. But instead, I know that if I put my thought to it, the way to do whatever I want to do already exists, and it will show up, and maybe several opportunities will show up. I don't know, okay? But the way to do whatever you want to do already exists. Your antenna will find it for you. You need only make that item important for you because your antenna finds what's important for you. It finds what's important. So what I did was I kept imagining that, and I actually moved to Sea Ranch not even knowing how to do this. I had a backup plan, though. That is, there's a community like an hour and a half away called Santa Rosa, which I could go there and commute back and forth and so on. I had my son with me. That wasn't too good an idea. He was 13 years old, and so I needed to spend some time there. But I went and did it anyway. I didn't have much cash, much of a cushion at the time. I was starting over. But I went there. And now, here's what's interesting, is after a couple of weeks there, I was looking through my library. I was really enjoying this Sea Ranch community I lived in. I was looking through my library, and I came across a book that I had read probably 50 times. Okay, it was a book about philosophy. It was by a life insurance salesman named Ben Feldman, and he had a lot of great philosophy and a lot of good ideas and stuff. And so I picked that book up and I started reading. There's 8 or 10 little pages in the middle of it that I love his philosophy, and I read that over and over again. But I happened to read an earlier part of the book that I read many times, and I came across an idea that he'd used. This is what he would do. He would go into a big city someplace, you know, and he would see this big high-rise building, you know, and he would go. He wanted to talk to the president of that company. Cold call, if you will, rapport practice, cold call. But he would go in, and he would take 5 $100 bills, and he would give them to the secretary. You know, the receptionist downstairs, you know, Mr. President or whatever, way up there. And with a little note that says, I'll trade these for 5 minutes. So what's the gal going to do? Not give them to her boss? So she goes upstairs and gives it to him. And he would get in the door very often. Very often he would give them. I looked at that and I thought, huh. Now, before, my antenna was not open because I had not made this thing important to me. I had seen that idea many times but never used it. And all of a sudden, bingo, here's the idea. Okay, the way to do anything you want to do already exists. You don't need to tune into it. I was tuned into it, and all of a sudden this thing was in front of me all this time, which I was not consciously using, all of a sudden showed up as the idea. So what I did was I took a letter that said, Dear Mr. whatever his name was, to my prospective client, I'll trade this for 20 minutes. And it was a brand new $100 bill. Put a letter behind it that described what my investment was about, why I wanted to talk to him. And I would send those out certified mail, registered mail. And about half of them called me. They thought it was a very clever idea. They called me, they read the letter, said, well, I'm not sure I'm interested in that, but I'd sure like to give you a little audience, you know, because they thought it was a very clever idea. They wanted to meet somebody with such a clever idea, actually, many of them, okay? The others just sent the money back. Couple, you know, 1 or 2 out of 20 were offended by it. Okay, that's writing on their walls, okay? Most of the people that I even saw gave me back the $100. They didn't need the $100. That was a clever idea. A few kept it. It probably cost me $50 an appointment with people who are able, you know, to invest $1 million or so. That's not a bad price for an appointment for somebody who already knows who you are. They know what you do. They have interest in it. You already have rapport with them through this letter. You connected with them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. See, the way to do whatever you want to do already exists. You need only tune into it. The way to expand your practice or your business already exists. You haven't seen it yet. You need only tune into it. You may have heard some ideas here now that you're beginning to tune into. I don't know, throughout our time together. But anyway, what I would do is after I got 10 of them done, I sent 10 more and 10 more and 10 more. And I sent a whole bunch of these out over time. And what I'd do is I'd go to San Francisco for a couple of days, and I'd just line up these appointments. I'd see 7 or 8 a day, a couple of days, and then I'd come home, okay? And then I'd send some more letters, and I'd go back down again. I built a $20 million investment pool out of that I ran. That's the one that I eventually sold, allowed me to retire, okay? But there I was, in a very rural community, 2.5 hours away from the major metropolitan center, didn't know anybody there, and they called me. Interesting? The way to do whatever you want to do already exists. Okay. I'll tell you another story if I can. This is a fellow by the name of Doug Hooper. Doug died a number of years ago, but he used to be a speaker in the Northern California area, in the Danville area, if you know where that is. And but he was a salesman. I forgot what it was he sold. Real estate, I think, but I'm not sure. But anyway, he would give these talks. He'd even go in the prison to give these talks. And he wrote, give these talks, called "You Are What You Think." Okay? And he was really kind of an engaging kind of fellow to listen to. And he would even write a column, for a local newspaper with, some of his thoughts on that. And one day he went to his mailbox, and he said to himself, as he looked at his mail, he says, all I have here are bills and some advertisements. He says, I want checks in the mail. I want checks in the mail. And so he knew how these processes work. He didn't know how he was going to get checks in the mail. He had no clue how he was going to get checks in the mail. But he started imagining checks in the mail. Okay, now what are the odds that all of a sudden checks in the mail are going to show up someday? What are the odds? Okay? Not good. You're right. Not good at all. So he started imagining it. And one of the rules he had is he would never tell anybody else what he was imagining or daydreaming or affirming, et cetera, or his own goals, because people will tend to throw water on, what are you doing? He didn't even tell his wife, didn't tell his sons, okay? He would just do that. Once in a while he would come home from work after he kept doing this, and he would say, Eileen, that's his wife, he says, any checks in the mail today? She'd say, no. Oh, okay. A few days later, Eileen, any checks in the mail today? No. Okay. And after a while, the sons would overhear this, and one would turn to the other and say, Dad's elevator no longer goes to the top, Because what a strange question to ask. So time went on, and he kept seeing it, kept imagining, and he knew what he was doing was conditioning things. He was making this important, and his antenna was going to find the way, okay? And so he was having a conversation with the local editor of the newspaper that he wrote the column for. And as they were having this conversation, the editor said, people have been writing in, Doug, and they would kind of like back issues of some of your writings and stuff. Doug said, okay, and so he put them together in a little booklet. And for each article that he wrote thereafter, at the end of it, he said, if you would like past writings of mine, I'll put in the little booklet, send $3 to Doug Hooper, address so and so and so and so. Checks in the mail. When I heard him talk about this, it was in a recorded thing, he had gotten checks in the mail every single business day except for 3 or 4 for 7.5 years. Okay? Checks in the mail. The way to do anything you want to do already exists. So you're just not tuned into it. I can walk right up to you and say, well, okay, what is your big, in fact, give me a microphone. I'm just going to try this. Okay? Let me ask you, Holly. If you had a dream business-wise, what would it be?
What would it be? I'd be empowering women.
That's fine. That's fine. Okay. That's the first thing that came up for you. Chances are there's the kernel of a dream in there. Okay, you would be empowering women. Okay, how are you going to do it?
How am I going to do it?
Yeah.
I would do weekends. I would do weekends with them.
All right, that's your left brain speaking.
Okay.
That's okay. It's all right. I'm just asking you.
Okay.
So you're not putting your antenna on it yet.
Okay.
And chances are you have not put your antenna on it because you had a hard time even thinking of this dream. Most of us don't even have the dream, by the way. In fact, we have a little conditioning that says, "Don't dream." Okay, don't dream. You don't want to be disappointed, do you? Okay. But anyway, go ahead.
The business word threw me. It's like I've got a bunch of dreams. I've got a whole bunch of different ones. When you said business, I was
Okay.
like, oh, how do I make it a business? I don't know how to make some of my dreams a business.
Yeah, and you don't know how to do it because chances are, if you have the training of many therapists, business is not in there.
Right.
Okay. And you may even have conditioning about business. You know, business people are greedy and all the stuff we wrote up here before and so on, okay, all the things in your way. But you see, if you will start imagining something about empowering women, without limits, empowering women, whatever that would be, I empower women. Imagine women coming to you in whatever fashion, whatever the issues are, and walking out empowered. And you did it. You can imagine it doing in some big group setting. You can imagine it one-on-one. You can imagine an auditorium filled with women. You can imagine writing books. You can imagine whatever you want to do. But just keep imagining it happening. And what happens is your antenna will start looking for it. And it's right in front of you. It's already right in front of you. It's right there. You just don't see it yet, okay? Is there a way for her to empower women? Yes or no?
Oh, yeah.
There's probably tons of them. If I ask all the left brains around here what your idea of it is, you can give lots of ideas to her, which might help her right brain or might help her antenna, if you will. Go into it, okay? Who else might have a dream? Somebody raise your hand. Right back here to Jojo. What might your dream be?
I would like to find some way to empower children and to show parents how to empower themselves and their children.
Oh, okay. You don't know how to do it yet? Obviously not, because I didn't hear anything come rolling out. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I have some ideas. I mean, like this practice, teaching them EFT, nonviolent communication is
Sure.
another thought that comes to mind.
Sure.
Teaching them how to get along with others and, like to be positive about
Yes.
things. Because I grew up being real negative. I'm one of those negative people.
Yeah. Let me ask you, in doing that and empowering children and things you want to do,
Yeah.
is that very remunerative, money-wise?
No. Not, well,
Okay. Let me ask. let me suggest that you restructure that dream or that affirmation of yours to include money in it.
I don't know how.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I don't know how.
I know
Yes.
you don't know how. I don't know how. But what I'm suggesting to you is you create affirmations and daydreams about having abundant money and resources to do this with. Okay? You don't know where it's going to come from. You don't have to know. That's checks in the mail. Okay? You don't have to know yet, but the way to do it already exists. You just don't see it yet. And in our conditioning is we've got to put the plan down. If we don't have the plan down right, well, we probably shouldn't do it because there's no way to do it. Or I don't have the skills to do it, or I don't have the help to do it, or whatever. You imagine it vividly, and the antenna starts to find it for you. It's out there. It's sort of like this. If you go into a supermarket and your left brain says what you want to look for is all down aisle 8, okay? You don't see aisle 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, the produce section, all the other stuff in there. You're only there in aisle 8, and all the rest of it is not there to you. If you have the antenna activated, then you're roaming the whole supermarket. And sooner or later, something shows up. And it gets very exciting after a while. Okay, very exciting. Anybody else have a dream? Yeah, right here, Margot. Where are we? We need a, okay.
I want to have a syndicated radio talk show.
All right. Now, you want to have a syndicated radio talk show.
I will have.
Not even I will have. I have a syndicated
have.
radio talk show.
Yeah.
Okay? And I would start imagining that. And without putting all the stuff on about what has to happen and who your sponsors are going to have to be and have to go out and whatever you're going to do. I don't even know about that. But imagine yourself standing in front of that microphone, enjoying that, saying what you're going to say, having your audience, having them call you, whatever is important to you about it. Imagine that happening and have fun with it. Just like that little Gary, hit that home run over and over and over again in his head, over and over and over again. Sooner or later, it finds it, and here comes the antenna. You had something here too, Chris.
I'm writing a book. I've got the title. It's called Happy Landings, and it's about babies being born and being welcomed into the world in the best possible way.
Sure.
And so that encompasses my knowledge as a midwife and all the 1,000 births I've attended. And it also, I've been waiting to work out how I can combine that with what I do now. And now that I've got EFT, that is a tool that women can work with in labour
Yes.
And so that sort of ties it all in for me.
Okay, and you said you were working on how to do that, and your left brain now found EFT to put it all together. Great.
Yeah.
And what I might suggest to you is you've been writing this book, and as you...
In my mind.
In your mind,
In my
okay, but
mind.
as you're doing that, see, you are activating your antenna. It's
Yes.
important to you. It's a dream. Something
Yes.
is going on there. Okay,
Yes.
you're already moving in that direction.
Yes.
And as you do that and imagine it, ways to do this show up. You want to imagine that being you know, the most popular book of its sort in all of Australia, with a waiting list to buy it in the United States.
That'd be nice.
And well, it would be nice. Imagine it, okay?
I
Now,
will.
dreams take you in directions. Okay,
Yes.
they don't necessarily come exactly true, but they take you in directions. That's very important to understand. They take you in directions. So I'd imagine, activate that antenna. It's a gift. It's an absolute gift that we all have. Every one of us has it, okay? It will find for us what's negative in our world. All we have to do is create negative things. That's why pessimists always find what's wrong in this world. Over and over and over again, and that's why all of us little optimists, us little Pollyannas, you know, see all the other stuff, you know, because that's what our antenna shows us. All right. I want to close this with a story, which hopefully draws all this together. In 1980, my son was 10 years old. And he liked to play baseball, as did I, you know, although my baseball playing days weren't prevalent at the moment. And so he wanted to play Little League Baseball. And Little League Baseball is like 11 and 12-year-olds. And my son was 10. He, you know, if he was really good, he might be able to make that. But So I thought, well, I know a lot about baseball. I've played a lot of baseball. I could probably coach a Little League baseball team. So I found the powers that be, and I said, I'd like to be a coach. Do you have any room? They said, sure. What they did was they gave me a minor league team, okay, 8, 9, and 10-year-old boys, okay? Kids that didn't know very much about baseball, and they weren't very good. I have to tell you that, you know. They weren't going to give me the major league team where the boys, you know, knew where you ran after you hit the ball. You go to first base, you know. Some of these other kids, I had to teach them that, all right? But it was hardball. I mean, it wasn't just softball. I mean, you know, it was the real ball. That thing hits you, it hurts, okay? And so on. And so they assigned this team to me, and I called it all the way up. We're going to meet on Saturday. Okay, so we all come out, and the boys are in a semicircle, you know, around me like this. And I'm talking to them, and I introduce them to Fred, by the way. Fred is our baseball bat. Okay, it's our only baseball bat. Everybody has to use Fred, okay? Because I wanted to get rid of this, like, you know, I have to have this certain bat for me to use. You know, it's a limit to people, you know. I wanted this bat instead of that bat. We just had one bat, so we didn't have to worry about that. So we had introduced to Fred, okay? And they could choke up on it or whatever they wanted to do, okay? But anyway, so we introduced them to Fred, and I'm talking to these little boys, you know, and they're you know, some of them are all hot to trot because they're, you know, they're going to be men, you know, they're going to play baseball and do great things. And there was one little boy hiding behind another boy back there. And you know, every time I would kind of look at him, he would kind of make sure I couldn't see him, you know. And I said, what's your name, son? And this little boy came out from behind the other boy, and he had these great big, bloodshot, soulful eyes. You ever seen the paintings by Walter Keane with these little kids with large eyes? Reminds you of him. You know, it looks right through you. Okay. And it looked as though he had been crying a lot. And he was a frail-looking little kid, very pale skin, shaking. Okay. You could hear his self-talk almost. I don't belong here. You know, nobody likes me. I'm odd. I'm different. Okay. And I said, what's your name? He says, I said, I'm sorry, I didn't. What's your name? And one of the other boys turned to me and said, that's Jimmy Slavinsky. With a little tone of voice says, I don't know what the hell he's doing on my team. Okay. I mean, this kid can't do anything. All this is, you know, I could see the other kids' looks in their faces, and I was interpreting all of this, you know. And he was sitting there, and he had this little bitty hand, little 10-year-old boy with his little hand in this, he had this great big glove, okay, you know. And, you know, I looked at him, and I thought, this is going to be a challenge, okay. But one thing I knew is this little boy had a dream. He had to have a dream. He had to have some kind of thought to get out there, okay. With all his apparent disadvantages that he had, somehow or other, he had a dream, he had a thought somehow he could get out of this, and maybe baseball was the way. He was at least willing to try. Okay, when you have dreams, your reticular activating system, your antenna finds things, and my guess is he had this dream going on, and he heard about the baseball, so he'd give it a try. But now he's really very nervous, So we started, doing baseball, and I noticed as I was watching Jimmy when he was throwing, he'd go like that, and with apologies to the ladies, where the little boys would say, "Oh, he throws like a girl." That's what they would say to him, of course. And I had to shut him up in a hurry because we're not going to do any of that on my baseball team. Okay, and when he ran, most of the boys could walk faster than he would run because his knees would knock together. And he was really a bony little kid. Okay, and reduced to tears easily. He was a crybaby to everybody else. All right. So during that first practice, we're going to have besides running and throwing and all that, we're going to have hitting practice. And of course, I don't have any pitchers yet that have any accuracy. Never did have pitchers with accuracy. So I would throw the batting practice. Okay, and I stand up there and I throw. And I have a few boys. I had a couple boys that really knew how to hit the ball. My son was pretty good at it, and 2 or 3 other boys. The rest of the boys, were kind of new at all this. Jimmy gets up there. I don't know if you know too much about baseball, but the proper way to do batting is you stand here, the pitcher's there, you stand and you step right towards the pitcher. If you put your weight behind it, and then you swing the bat, and hit the ball. Okay. Remember, this is a hard ball now. He got this frail little body. There's no meat on his bones anywhere, even to cushion a ball if it happened to hit. Okay. So I'd throw the ball, and this is what Jimmy would do. He'd stand there like this, and the moment the ball came, he'd step like this, called stepping in the bucket. You don't step here like you're supposed to. He steps like this because he wants to get away from the ball, and then he closes his eyes and goes, okay? It didn't come anywhere close to the ball. So I did that 3 or 4 more times, and he didn't hit the ball at all, and some of the other kids would laugh, and I just shut them up, Practice ends, and I'm walking off the field, and I'm carrying the ball out to my car and like this, and little Jimmy is right next to me. He's kind of bumping into me. It's like he had found a friend, So and I said, "Well, Jimmy," I said, "how'd you like practice today?" And he said, "Well," he says, "it was okay. It was all right." I said, "Well, we're going to need to work on your hitting a little bit. You think?" Yeah, we got to work on my hitting. Yeah, okay. I said, "Well, why don't you do something for me? Could you, Jimmy?" He says, "Yeah." I said, "You know what the big league players do?" He said, "They dream, they imagine getting big league hits." That's the way I would say it, big league hits. Use that little movement, getting big league hits. They'd imagine that in their own mind. That's what they do, and they go over and over and over again in their mind how they're going to hit that baseball and how they're going to face a certain pitcher and what they're going to do when the ball goes so. And they do that, by the way. I said, "Can you do that? Can you imagine getting a big league hit?" Because see, I asked him before that what was his dream for this season. He says, "Oh, get a big hit. Get a big hit. Get a big league hit. Can you imagine that?" He says, "Yeah, I can do that." And so he walks off with a little hope, I think. Okay, and I go off to my car. Next practice or two comes along. Jimmy's not doing much, but I do ask him one time during that. I said, Have you been imagining that big league hit? Big league hit. And he said to me, he says, "That's all I've been thinking about." Now I knew enough at that time to know that as long as he has a consistent thought like that and a daydream like that, I didn't know when it was going to happen, this season, next season, or some year in the next century, but it was going to take him in a direction. Something was going to happen, okay? So after about 3 or 4 more practices, he's up there. I finally got him to the point where instead of doing this and going like that, what he would do is he'd stand like this with the bat like that, and the ball would come. He'd still step in the bucket, okay, and do this, but he didn't do this anymore. So we have a little headway. He's yet to hit a ball, okay? So I'd throw it, and he would go like that. But I was noticing as he would go like this, the ball wouldn't even reach the plate, okay? So I thought, well, why don't I throw it where he's swinging? So I did. I started throwing where he's swinging, and he got a little foul tip, went back, and he got a little blooper over there someplace. And after about the 6th or 7th throw like that, he swung and hit it right on the nose, and it goes right by my ear, okay? And I look out, I turned to center field like this, we're going over second base, and there's all of my baseball players, all of them sitting down, okay? And they know Coach won't take that, but Coach's back is to him, okay? And he's paying attention to this kid he's sort of like a special little kid, and they're all picking that up, And so the minute I turn around, they all get up and they go running after this baseball, okay? Now, mind you, Jimmy is sitting there. This is what he's seeing out there. All this rejection from all these kids, and he's trying to hit a baseball, So God bless him. But anyway, I went out there and I turned to Jimmy like this after I saw this going on, and he had this big smile on his face, sort of oh, I did it. I did it. I went, he didn't say anything, he just went, big league hit, Big smile on his face. Okay. So a few more practices go on, and then we're going to have our first game. All right. And we had our first game, and we won our first game. No thanks to Jimmy, by the way. No thanks whatsoever to Jimmy. And by the way this thing works is the league rules are everybody plays at equal time, regardless of skill. That's just what happened. Everybody plays at the same time. Now, the thing we didn't have for our first game, though, was our uniforms. There was no uniform. In fact, for this league, it wasn't really uniforms. They just gave you a little jersey, a little colored jersey. In this case, it was white with green sleeves, okay? And we didn't have our uniform and our jerseys, and so they kept asking me about it at practice. Where's our jerseys? Where's our jerseys? And so the day before the second game came, here came our jerseys. Okay? And they came in a big box to me, and I got this idea that I was going to put their names on the back like they do with the pros. They get somebody's name on the back. So I went on down to a lettering shop, and I just didn't put their names on the back. Now listen to this. Okay? I put something other than just their names. Like instead of putting Eric back there, it was Excellent Eric. Instead of putting Michael down there, who was one of our really good ball players, it was Magnificent Michael. Okay? We had Courageous Colin. We had Brave Brett. We had the Great Adam Craig. You hear that? That was on the back of it. Okay? The Great Adam Craig. We had Jolton Joe Hayashi, by the way. Jolton Joe Hayashi, stocky Oriental kid, didn't hit the ball very often, but when he hit it, man, let me tell you, he really laid into it. And Joe DiMaggio, as it turns out, whose nickname, by the way, in baseball was Jolton Joe, happened to play golf about an hour from where I lived, and I knew he was there a lot, so I went over to Half Moon Bay, took a photograph of Joe running around the bases, my Joe Hayashi, and I just left it for Joe DiMaggio to sign if he would, and he did. He signed to Joe Hayashi from Jolton Joe DiMaggio, okay? And so I gave it to the kid. Oh, he was really hot about that. Yeah, that was wonderful, Well, we had a jersey also for Jimmy Slavinsky, okay? And this is an exact replica of that jersey, exact, okay? Slugger Slavinsky, okay? Slugger Slavinsky. Now, let me tell you what happened in this case. I gave these kids these jerseys. I just had this box, with these jerseys in it, and they started pulling out, looking at it, and they started putting it on, and they walked this much higher off the ground. They would say, see my name, is it on right? They'd go like, and this meant so much to them. Talk about words. That's a form of an affirmation, isn't it? Magnificent Michael is a form of an affirmation. The Great Adam Craig is a form of an affirmation. So it's Slugger Slavinsky, okay? So... Anyway, they got very excited about it. The parents loved it. And by the way, when you go to these games, there are about 100 people there. There are parents and there are uncles and aunts and brothers and sisters and classmates and a few things come to this game, including the other team. And but anyway, this game started, and I need to tell you one of the little things that happened in this game. The pitching here is not very accurate, so it's really easy just to... it's a 5-inning game, and the score is like 34-22, okay? And a lot of that happens with walks. The pitchers just walk the kids, and they run around. I didn't want my kids, some of the coaches say, just sit up there and take it. Take the ball. They'll never get enough strikes on you. You can just walk around and get a lot of runs that way, okay? But that's not teaching the kids how to hit the ball or anything. So I didn't want to do that. So I had to sort of draw a blend between this useful part of winning a game, that is, have the kids walk, and actually teaching them how to hit the ball and getting some self-confidence and that kind of thing, So I had this little signal that I had with them. It was a verbal signal, and that is when the count was 3-0 or 3-1, something like that. 3 balls and no strikes and 3-1 or something like that. I would say to them, "Look for your pitch." Now I'm standing in the third base coaching box, right near where the third base is. That's where I was standing. I'd say, "Look for your pitch," and what that meant was, they were to let the ball go unless it was right where they wanted it, okay? And then swing from the heels, give it a ride. All right. So anyway, the game is close. I forgot the exact score here, but I had a man on first and a man on second with 1 out. Remember that very specifically. And who was coming to the plate but Slugger Slavinsky? Okay. And he's standing up there, you know, and despite all his imagination and everything else, he's quite timid up there. He's starting to do this, and the pitcher's pitching, and it goes 1-1 and 2-1 and gets to 3-1 or something like that. And then it was 3-1, I remember, and I said, "Look for your pitch, Slugger." He kind of looks at me like that. Okay. And the pitcher winds up, and I'm going to take a little while to explain something that happened in a flash, okay? When somebody imagines something over and over and over again, you start to create the neurology. You've been there before. It's like what I call the phantom home run of mine when I was this little boy, you know. You build the neurology in. The way to do it is already there within your system because you've created it mentally. And he had in his own imagination gotten that big league hit over and over and over and over again, okay, in his imagination. The rest of the time he's overstepping in the bucket, you know, except for that one hit that went by my ear. So anyway, the pitcher winds up, and in an instant, I watched Jimmy's body, and I've been around this game a long time, and I knew that all of the imagination he had now was showing up. He looked at it was right where he wanted it. For the first time ever, physically, he stepped towards the pitcher. The first time ever, he stepped right and went crack like that, and it goes ripping right by me at the third base, by the third baseman, and he goes bounding on the left field. Well, the runner from second goes in, I run him in. The guy from first comes around, I run him in, and I look up, and there's Jimmy running from first to second, and gone was that knock-kneed run. He was gliding, and he was so proud. He was coming around, and he looked at me with those great big eyes that no longer had the tears in them. They were thrilled, and the eyes said, "I did it." Okay, and he comes running to me, and I hold him up at third base because they got the ball in, they ran it in, and he's standing there right in front of me, 1 foot on the base, 1 foot like this, looking down at home plate, going like this, all full of himself, okay? But what was happening, and this is very important, was everybody on that field stood up. His own players, the other team stood up, all of the parents, everybody knew this kid. Everybody knew Jimmy Slavinsky. They all knew him, okay? And the other team was saying, "Good hit, Jimmy." And his own team was saying, "Jimmy, good hit." And the parents were just yelling and screaming. Jimmy was drinking it all in, sort of like this, you know. And I come behind him, and I look at him, and he looks up at me, you know, and I said, "Big league hit, Jimmy," you know. He got this big smile, you know, and anyway, one of the things to notice there is there was a real spiritual thing happening there. If you want to go back and look at this story, I got to tell you, the rest of the season, Jimmy batted second. He was a good hitter for us. Wasn't our best hitter by any means, but batted second. Fairly consistent. But anyway, you might think this story is about, you know, coach sees some potential in young boy, gives young boy encouragement, he gets the hit of the day, saves the day, and so on goes the fairy tale story. If that's the story you hear, you missed it. You missed it. Who was the teacher there in this story? Jimmy Slavinsky or his coach? Jimmy Slavinsky, absolutely. There is the boy that did the imagination. There is the boy that got that big league hit over and over and over again. There is the boy that taught everyone there about their own possibilities. Because when you watch this happen, and whether you're a parent or another boy or a coach or anything else, when you watch this happen in front of you and you see somebody come out of themselves like that and do that, you recognize you have the same potential when you see that. There's a oneness. There was a oneness on that field with all the love that was going on. Everybody just moved in favor of Jimmy Slavinsky. Anyway, that's going to conclude our day in the Palace of Possibilities. I want to tell you it's been an absolute thrill spending this day with you. Absolute thrill. And I'm going to wish that you create new, consistent thoughts for a new reality, and you dream new dreams that take you in new directions. Thank you very much.